Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello, and welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast. I am Dr. Supatra Tovar. I am so excited to have overeating specialist and psychologist, Dr. Glenn Livingston, with us today. Dr. Glenn, how are you?
I am great. It's an honor to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I'm very excited. Dr. Glenn and I are very similarly minded, and we work in similar industries. Well, the same industry, really. And so I've just been really excited to pick his brain. So I am going to read a little bit about Dr. Glenn, and then we're going to get into our questions.
Sure. And then you can just call me Glenn, would be probably more efficient. Up to you.
Sure, of course. Okay. Dr. Glenn Livingston is a veteran psychologist and former CEO of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm serving Fortune 500 food industry clients. With decades of experience researching binge eating and food psychology, including a landmark self-funded study with, get this, you guys, over 40,000 participants, Dr. Livingston now helps individuals escape the cycle of overeating through practical, sustainable methods. His work has been featured in prominent media outlets like the New York Times, ABC, and CBS, and he is the author of 8 books, people. His most current book is called Defeat Your Cravings. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I need someone to follow me around and introduce me like that at parties. That would be a good thing. It all makes me sound a lot bigger than I am. I'm just a guy who figured out the overeating thing. So.
Oh, well, no, you have like amazing experience, and I like to make my bios pop, I tell you.
Okay.
So tell me, Glenn, I would love to know, what is your inspiration? This is a big part of the first part of my podcast always, is really delving into what inspired people to go into the work that they do. I think that there's something really deep and something that the audience can really glean from when they hear the why behind someone's work.
Well, it's not just an intellectual curiosity. It's not like I'm a doctor who just decided to work with overeaters. This was the bane of my existence. I was almost 300 pounds. And worse yet, I couldn't stop thinking about food. Being a great psychologist, it's not so much about everything, although that's a big part of it. It's about getting people to love and trust you enough that they'll listen to what you know. And that requires that you lend them your soul. You have to be just 100% present with them. And in my 20s and 30s, I really had a hard time doing that. I would think I was decent anyway. I like to think I was decent anyway, but I had a hard time being emotionally present 100% because of my own food struggles. And I'd be sitting with a high-risk patient and thinking, can I get the next pizza? Or when can I get to the deli and dislodge my jaw like a steak and empty the delicatessen tray into it? So that was worse, particularly because I came from a family of 17 psychologists and psychotherapists. And if something breaks in the house, we all rush over and ask it how it feels, and nobody can fix it.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine your holidays.
But that's just always been the nearest and dearest thing to my heart. And I thought that you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so I thought if I could heal the hole in my heart, then I'd stop trying to fill the hole in my stomach. And so I took a very traditional approach. I went to all the best psychologists and psychiatrists and Overeaters Anonymous and nutritionists, and I took medication, and I kind of cried and screamed and confessed all the guilt in my soul. And it helped me as a person. I think it made me a more compassionate person. I forgave myself for a lot of things, but it didn't help me so much with food. I got a little thinner, a lot fatter, a little thinner, a lot fatter. And at the same time, I was consulting for industry. I had time for a second career because I was married for 28 years to a woman that traveled for business. And we didn't have kids and I didn't commute. So what am I going to do? I started consulting for industry. And I was on the wrong side of the war. I was helping
Mhm.
sell sugar and, hyper palatable concentrations of starch and salt and excitotoxins. And yeah, it's all geared at hitting the bliss point in the reptilian brain without enough nutrition to feel satisfied. So that
Yes.
all these fat cats in white suits with mustaches are laughing all the way to the bank when you're looking for love at the bottom of a bag or a box or a container. And that
Oh
was
my
me for
gosh.
all those years.
Mhm.
But over the years, I slowly figured out that, well, wait a minute. They're targeting the reptilian brain, like the part of the brain that's really responsible for our survival drives. It doesn't necessarily know love. It's much more like a bad college drinking game. Like this is the reptilian brain. It's kind of back here in the brainstem, and it looks at something in the environment and it says, "Do I eat it? Do I mate with it? Or do I kill it?" Love is from the mammalian brain that says, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what impact does that have on your tribe and the people that you love? And then the neocortex on top of that can introduce a delay for your longer term goals. Before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what impact does that have on um, weight loss and fitness, but also music and spirituality and art and your role in your work and everything that we think of that makes us human? That's kind of up here in the brain. That's not back here. Back here
Mhm.
is eat, mate, or kill. And what's really going on when we push all of our best thinking aside and say just hand over the cheesecake and nobody gets hurt is, is that this thing is getting active. This thing is getting active, and we're designed from an evolutionary vantage point to be able to push the higher brain out of the way when we need to take action to survive. If there is a hungry tiger chasing you, that's not the time that you can rest and digest and chill and think about your long term goals. That's time to breathe fast and get the hell out of there. Similarly, in a primitive environment when food was relatively scarce and we had to compete for it, when you perceived the availability of food resources, you'd have to push your rational brain out of the way, and just take action and go get them. There wasn't time to really think and make decisions. So that's what's going on. It's a very physiologically and evolutionarily healthy mechanism, but it doesn't work in the modern food environment because I can go downstairs and buy 100,000 calories for $100, and then I can go across the street and do the same thing, right? So,
Mhm.
so I started to say to myself, well, this is all very primitive, and these companies have tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to pay rocket scientists to figure out how to do this. And I could tell you stories about other things that they did to take advantage of that survival impulse. And this has nothing to do with having been in a bad marriage or being a little lonely or brokenhearted or depressed, or, that my mother did something to me when I was 2 or whatever. This is not about my personal psychology. This was not about that hole in my emotional heart. This was about this thing getting too stimulated and active and pushing the rest of Glenn out of the way.
Mhm.
And so, like, I was a child and family psychologist. I was not going to teach this stuff. Um, and I did something a little crazy. I decided I have to know when this thing is awake if I was going to
Mhm.
get better. And
Mhm.
so I'm always a little embarrassed about this, and no one has to use these words, but this is what I did because it was me personally. I said, this thing is my inner pig. And I'm going to
Mhm.
draw a very clear line in the sand. People are frightened of very clear lines when it comes to food, which is really interesting. We'll talk about that later. But I'm going to say something like, I'm never going to have chocolate on a weekday. So here's that line in the sand. And it functions like a tripwire. It's, I'm only ever going to have chocolate on a weekend and no more than 2 ounces after a workout. And by defining that really clear line, this thing would wake me up when my reptilian brain was trying to get through. And
Mhm.
I would say, let's say I'm at a Starbucks on a Wednesday and there's a big chocolate bar on the counter. And I hear this voice in my head that says, you know what, Glenn? It'll be just as easy to start your silly rule again tomorrow. You worked out
Mhm.
hard enough, and a little is not going to kill you. Go ahead. We'll just start again tomorrow. Yippee. Let's go get some, right? I
Mhm.
say, wait a minute. That's not me. That's my inner pig. And it's squealing for pig slop. Pig slop.
Mhm.
Chocolate on a Wednesday afternoon is pig slop. I don't eat pig slop. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. And
Mhm.
so I wish I could tell you that was a miracle and that I was all better right away, but it wasn't.
Mhm.
What happened though was I got clarity. And I got a little bit of space between stimulus and response to make the right decision, just a little bit more space. And over the next 8 years for me personally, I can teach people how to do this in a month now, but for me, it took 8 years because I didn't have all these tools. I started challenging the things that my pig was saying. For example, if the pig says it'll be just as easy to start again tomorrow, I would say, wait a minute, that's not true. Because the way that neuroplasticity works, what fires together wires together. So if I have a craving for chocolate and I say I'll just start again tomorrow, and then I eat the chocolate, I've reinforced the craving and I've reinforced the idea that I can just start tomorrow. So my craving is going to be worse tomorrow, and I'm going to be more likely to say I'll just start tomorrow. So if you're in a hole, you better stop digging. You can only use the present moment to be healthy.
Mm.
And I'm almost done, and then I'll pause and you can ask me whatever you want. I know I got wound up about these kind of things, but the basics are important. And in that space between stimulus and response, I had a few extra microseconds to make the right decision. Sometimes I would, and sometimes I wouldn't. I no longer felt confused. I no longer felt like this had something to do with my very deep personal history or, something that was broken inside. I didn't think I had a disease. I said, this thing is just too powerful. It wakes up and it does what it wants to do. And I'm just starting to get a little control here. And I focused on that in my journal. And I kept a log of all the things the pig said and all the things that it was wrong about.
Mhm.
And I gradually pulled this apart. And it became easier and easier to make decisions. I found it was important to make that I could and would follow as opposed to trying to follow a strict diet. I found that the control was more important than the particular diet that I was following. And setting low bars worked a lot better than setting high bars to start with.
Mhm.
I get better. I'm maintaining about 75, 80 pounds from where I was. My blood numbers come down. At one point, my triglycerides were over 1,000. I was not healthy. I was not well. I made
Mhm.
problems. I get better over that period of time. In 2015, I'm kind of headed towards a divorce, and I realize I'm going to have to do something different. So I call the CEO of a publishing company that I had a minor stake in from all of my business dealings. And I said, I'm trying to figure out what to do. And he says, well, we need to write our own book because we need to show other authors that we know what we're doing with marketing. And I need you to be able to go out and talk about it. And I said, well, I have this crazy journal. He says, I love it. Put it into a book. I take a few months, I put it into a book. 2 weeks later, he calls me back and he says, Glenn, donuts or pig's lap, I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. And he proceeds to lose 90 pounds. So we kind of had proof of concept. And I mean, it's not a double blind, statistically controlled, third party university medical study, but it was my friend and I. And we publish it. And we were in marketing for a lot of years. We kind of knew what we were doing, but I had no idea. I had no idea how it was going to take off. And out there, I started going on shows like this and talking about it. And before I know it, we have 1 million readers. And then
Wow.
I got a gig on Psychology Today. I got 1 million readers there too. Wrote a bunch more books, wound up running an agency with 2,000 clients over the next 8 years or so. And we were keeping stats on the agency about the efficacy. And we'd find it was really good for people who would engage. Sometimes people buy programs and they don't engage. But for the people who would engage with their coaches, we had an 84% reduction, 89.4% reduction in overeating in the first month. But
Wow.
when you, it was really good. And basically, I taught people to fix their thinking and take away their excuses really quickly.
Mhm.
At the 6 month and 1 year mark, it wasn't as good, but it was more like 55, 60%. But it was bimodal, meaning that there were two frequent responses. One was, hey, doc, you took away all my excuses. I don't have any good reasons to do this anymore, but oh, well, what the hell? I just really want to. Screw it, just do it. And
Mhm.
they stop using the tools, right?
Mhm.
And then the rest were up like 75, 80%, and they were people who had kept using the tools. And I thought, well, why would you stop using the tools? Like you're making the rules. Nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody's telling you what you can or can't eat. It's a miserable life when you feel like you can't control your food. Like everything from the most mild case where you're just eating beyond your own worst judgment, own best judgment, to feeling like you can't stop eating all day long. It's it's not a happy life, and this is not an invasive procedure. There are no pills or powders or potions you have to buy. There are no surgical procedures you have to go through. There's no recovery. Like, why would people stop doing this? So I really get interested in investigating that over the next year.
Mm.
And what I found was it all clusters around what we psychologists would call organismic distress, where the brain perceives there to be an emergency, not enough nutrition, not enough sleep, too many decisions to make. Willpower is mostly just the ability to make good decisions, and you can only make so many good decisions every day. So when people are overwhelmed in business, or they've got 5 kids, or they just have to figure out who's taking Jenny to soccer practice, too many decisions, and it wears down their executive function. It wears down their willpower. Feeling isolated from your tribe. You don't have to be a social butterfly, but you do have to feel like you have a tribe. So,
Mhm.
so all of these different forms of organismic distress, including not good enough nutrition, which was the key, that seemed to be driving the screw it, just do it response. So my 8th book and best book, which includes the science of cravings extinction and how to overcome the screw it, just do it response, is called Defeat Your Cravings. And I've been promoting that one for a couple of years because I think that's where it's at. So,
So I love it. I am a not food rules person. So when I hear about food rules, I'm like, whoa, I always
I
kind
know.
of, and then the main reason why is because I think that tends to feed into the cravings themselves when we make something taboo or we say we cannot eat something. But I think the way that you have distinguished it is that you're not necessarily you are making a rule, but what you're hoping for is the breadth of time that
Hmm.
it takes for somebody who may just go immediately into their craving. You're asking for a pause. And
Hmm.
I think that that is a really powerful way to kind of, in essence, it's kind of urge surfing, where you want the thing, but if you just kind of hold out and think about it a little bit more, you may not want it. And the reason why you may not want it is because you're experiencing this distress, this sudden onset of whatever stress it is, or despair, or loneliness, or whatever you're feeling, and you realize that that your craving is related to that distress. That's where I really kind of delve in with people,
Hmm.
is what is behind the actual urge. And so my question for you is, when you found yourself overweight and not happy with yourself and with your body, what do you think were the main drivers of overweight? I mean, I would say you worked in the food industry. They hire craveability experts. That's probably what you were termed at the time. Do you think that your early nutrition was a part of the problem?
The fact that I didn't know what a vegetable was until I was 16,
There
something.
you go. So
Yeah,
tell me about that. What do you think led to the problem in the first place?
sure. I'm gonna tell you 2 things first about your concern about the rules. One is that the vast majority of our clients are not necessarily making a rule that says they have to give up sugar entirely or they have to give up pizza entirely. Like 2 out of 3 people come up with some conditions that they'll have it twice a week or something like that. And you can change the rules whenever you want to. We use the word never so that there's really an alarm set. So you really know, you can identify when this thing is, so that you can pause, so that you
Mhm.
can. So that's what that's about. Um,
Mhm.
and I say it's kind of like we present it to our pigs as if it were set in stone, or our food monsters as if it were set in stone. The same way that I told my niece Sarah that she couldn't cross the street without holding my hand ever when she was 2, never ever, not when she's a big girl. I didn't want her thinking about it. It was too scary. But of course, I'm going to teach her how to do that later on as she evolves and gains experience and wisdom. Okay, so what I want to answer your question directly. What led to my problem in the first place? I mean, I could tell you an emotional story about my mom after I got through that 40,000 person study, which showed that people who struggled with chocolate, like me, because my binges always started with chocolate, that they tended to be lonely or brokenhearted or a little depressed. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, I know I'm not in a great marriage and I'm a little lonely and brokenhearted. It makes sense. But how did this all start? Where did it come from? And she got this horrible look on her face. This was on Skype. And remember the days when we had Skype?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. And she gets this horrible look on her face and she goes, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." And I think I was 41 years old or something at the time. And I said, "Mom, it was 40 years ago. I love you. I forgive you for whatever it is. I just want to figure it out. And you're a therapist and you struggle with chocolate also. Let's see if we can figure this out." So she says, "You know what, honey? When you were 1 year old in 1965, your dad was a captain in the army. And I was frightened that he was going to be taken to Vietnam. We're trying to get pregnant with your sister. I thought I'm going to be an army widow with two little kids. At the same time, your grandfather and my dad had just gotten out of prison, and I had no idea where he was. He was gone for 2 years, and I had idolized him, and I was horrifically depressed. I felt awfully abandoned, and I was anxious about being abandoned again. I didn't have the wherewithal to hug you and love you and feed you the right thing and kiss you when you really needed it. So I kept a big bottle of chocolate Bosco syrup in a refrigerator on the floor. And when you would come over to me and I wanted to just stare at the wall, I would say, "Go get your Bosco, honey." And you'd go crawling over to the refrigerator and you'd open up the Bosco and you'd suck on the bottle and you go into a chocolate sugar coma.
Wow.
So, but now, so it was a good moment. It was a really good moment. My mom and I had a little cry and a metaphorical hug because we were at a distance. And I hated myself less. Like some of my self-hatred dissolved at that point. And I could ask my mother all types of things about that time in her life, which was very meaningful. It brought us closer. Good conversation to have. But my chocolate eating got worse after that. And
Mm.
the reason it got worse was because there was this crazy voice in my head that said, I'm not schizophrenic, but we all have different thoughts and you can partition them if you want to.
Of course.
And this voice in my head said, "You know what, Glenn, you're right. Our mama didn't love us enough. And she left a great big chocolate sized hole in your heart. And until you can either fix this marriage or get out and find the love of your life, you're going to have to go right on eating chocolate. Yippee, let's go get some now." So that voice of justification got stronger. It had a reason.
Interesting. Yes.
And so for me, now I know that other people work it out by solving the emotional eating part of the equation. But for me, it turned out to be a lot faster to figure out how to sever the link between the emotions and the overeating. But by being able to wake up and knowing exactly what role I wanted chocolate to play in my life. Like I knew where the boundaries are. The same way that you know where a red light is, you know where a stop sign is when you're driving around. And yes, you feel rebellious when you come up against a red light. I don't want to stop at the red lights. I've got places to go and people to see and things to do.
Mm.
But I do stop. And I'm kind of mindful when I'm driving. I'm not rigidly obeying the rules. I know what the rules are. I know where the boundaries are. And because of that, I know that I'm going to be safe because there are all these dangerous intersections that wouldn't work without traffic lights. And so therefore I can be mindful while I'm driving. So for me, it's not a rules versus mindfulness type of thing. It's a rules and mindfulness kind of thing. And they really support each other.
Wow, that's so powerful, and it's heartbreaking to hear. I'm sure from your mom having that self-awareness, it was difficult to be able to admit that to you, but even though it increased your chocolate consumption
Hmm.
more after having that conversation, having that realization, I think, is everything. That's what I do a lot with my clients is we really do that deep dive into our past and to see what are the origins? What were the messages that we got from our childhood? What were the food rules from our childhood? Because we're tiny little sponges growing
Yeah.
up, and that's how these things develop. And when they persist over time, they become subconscious and unconscious. And what you did was you made the subconscious conscious. It did take you and made you backslide for a time,
For a period. For a period, yeah.
but with awareness. And that's at the heart of the work that I do, is that I think self-awareness is the key to really truly tuning into your body and listening and understanding what your body is trying to tell you as opposed to what your mind is trying to tell you, and discerning the difference. So I think that that's really powerful work, and we're going to touch on this a lot more in the next section. We're out of time for this first half of this podcast, but I really want to get into the inner workings of your book, the takeaways that we can provide our audience, actionable things that they can do
You got it.
to tackle overeating and emotional eating. So you guys come back for the second half of this amazing interview with the overeating specialist and psychologist, Dr. Glenn Livingston. Dr. Glenn, thank you for joining us for this first half. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight Podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Insight Podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.